Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD User Monthly Webinar for September 2022. This is Eric Bobrow, and it's my pleasure to talk to you and help you with your ArchiCAD questions in this open coaching Q&A. You can see here from the ArchiCAD user website that today is an ArchiCAD coaching clinic, so I'm open to any questions that you have. Many of you have sent in questions ahead of time. I'm going to give priority to the ones who have done that, but I will always be open to either follow-up questions, like, hey, can you go over that again, or related questions, and even new questions if I can fit them in. So let me know that you can hear me and see the screen. When you, to do that, you can type into the questions area and tell me where you're calling in from. So I do see that we have Mario from Rio de Janeiro. Okay, excellent. Rick, hey, been a while, from Tokyo. All right, so you can hear me and see the screen, and look forward to seeing some greetings from a bunch of you. Rob from Cheshire in the UK. So we've got South America, Asia in terms of Tokyo, UK, Randy from Minnesota, Marianne from North Carolina, Ian from Scotland, so another one from the European area. All right, Doug from Brooklyn. Hey, been a while. Okay, so we'll get going. As I said, I did get a bunch of questions sent in here, and let me just check to see if some of you are in the house. So Tom Rodden was one of the people who had some simple questions. Let's just see, Tom Rodden. Yeah, there you are. Okay, so let me open up your line, see if we can get some communication going with audio. Tom, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Awesome. Okay, so you had some questions that you said related to ArchiCAD 20, and I'll just blow them up. Pretty much all of them will be the same in any recent version of ArchiCAD. So I will just demonstrate them. Let's see, I think I have a 26 one open. It's going to be basically much the same here, but we'll what do you call it? I'll just mention if there are any differences. So let me just create a new file here, and we'll get going. So I'm glad that you mentioned you had questions that you felt were maybe out of date or something, and I could easily see no, they're just common questions for ArchiCAD users who haven't learned everything, and none of us has really learned everything. So I'm happy to help you. So let's take a look at them in order. How to make surfaces like floors and furniture glossy. Okay, now there's a difference in terms of, or let's say, ArchiCAD's 3D window is capable of making things look shiny, but it's not possible to make them glossy in terms of reflective directly within the 3D window. So let's just take a look at what I mean by that, and then what options you have here. So let's go in this file here. So I will go and just draw, let's say, a box of walls, just to be sort of simple, and do a floor underneath the walls here, and we'll take a look in 3D, and we'll go up and look at this surface here. So this slab here is designated as, well, I just used the default settings. It's designated as a generic 10-inch slab with, as you can see, a composite, so some sort of skin on top, and then a larger volume for the framing there. Now, this dialog box here looks a little different in 26 because they now have some folders, but ultimately all versions of ArchiCAD will allow you to choose, hey, what type of element is this from a pop-up? Just the folders make it a little easier to see groups of things. Now, I'm not really concerned with that, because what I want to do is say that the top surface, just for simplicity, I'm going to make the top surface overridden and give it a different appearance. You can see when I made a generic interior, it made it, well, it's light green because it's selected, but it's basically a white or an off-white color. Now I'll go in here and again say something like we have wood. So again, you wouldn't have the folders, but you would just be able to go alphabetically to pick something. So let's just take something like wood flooring here. And actually that might have been what it was looking like before, but now I know exactly what I've got. I'm getting a surface here with that name. Now, if I zoom in on this, you know, it looks sort of, well, we can see the board pattern. If I hit the escape key to deselect it, we can see it's sort of dull, right? Now let's look at that wood flooring in the options menu surfaces. So this is identical in version 20 and 26, just opening options surfaces. If you're in the outside the US, you may have options element attributes, then a submenu that has surfaces. Again, here we have some folders in the newest version, but other than that, it's the same. I'm going to go into the wood flooring and we'll see some dialogue. Now in your version, we would have this below an upper section. So the upper section would allow you to choose which thing, and then below you'd have all of this information. So it's essentially the same, just moved over to the right. Now we have a surface color that gives you the chip. Like if you were to do it without any texture and you were just picking it, you can see this color is here. But this is the critical part, that it's got a picture file. Now, the picture file, we can browse and choose other ones and maybe make them brighter or more yellow or tan or, you know, whatever. But what's critical here is that there's reflection settings. So now if I were to raise up the shininess, you can see just a slight shine start to come up here. And if we were to bring up the some of the other sliders, it's just going to reflect more light. You can just barely see a little bit of a shine. I'll turn it all the way up to shine here, and then I'll also use specular, and you can see these two. This is now getting sort of a hot spot, like if you can imagine a lamp on it. Now we see this in the preview here. We're still using the same picture file, but let's just say okay. Okay, it got brighter here. So it is shinier in that sense, not reflective. We will never see a reflection if we were to say put in, you know, let's say a window here. We'll never see a reflection of that window in ArchiCAD 3D window. Now, if we have certain lights, if we do some lighting, we might see some more differentiation here between, you know, the shadow and the light. But let's look at what we have within ArchiCAD to make something reflective, and that would be under the document menu, and it would be under creative imaging, and we can photo render this. Now this is a built-in tool that it's had some different names and used some somewhat different settings over the years, but for quite a few years, the last probably 10 years, we've had what's called Cine Render, or something based on the Cinema 4D tools. Now I'm going to go to the photo rendering settings and say, well, how am I going to render this? And you can see this little black area. If I click on it, it's going to get a preview of this. And this would be the real project. Obviously, it's just a 4 walls and a floor. But let's look at turning on, let's see, quality. We'll have this say high, so it'll be higher quality here, and high here. So we're doing some high quality analysis. Now the preview isn't necessarily going to show that, but you can see it takes a little longer to do this. Now we should affect this. This is just a preview. Let's see, I think. Anyway, let me just say, do a rendering. Now, right now it's doing a rendering that's in a small area. And we're seeing it do some analysis of the lighting, and we're still not seeing the reflections. And it will get a little bit clearer in a minute as it processes this. But the reason is that the surface has not been defined in this environment to be reflective. It's brighter than it was, but it will take a little longer. Now, if I make this a little lower quality, this preview would come up quicker. And it's crazy, you know, that this tiny little scene is taking, you know, a minute or a couple of minutes to render something that is absurdly similar to the standard image. But let's go in while it's working. Let's go under Options, Surfaces, and say, you know what? I'd like to look at this wood flooring, and I'd like to look at it not in the basic engine, but in the rendering environment. And here we can say that it's going to have reflectance here. Let's see if I click on this. And see, layers, I haven't really done this, but here there's reflection strength, texture, image, colored. Yeah, I haven't looked at this for a long time. See, one thing I'll just point out is this is tedious to work out. It's a little bit confusing, but this is where you would get a reflective scene, is using the built-in rendering, or probably much simpler if you really want to have high quality images, you would export your model to something like Twinmotion or Enscape, and in there you have very quick feedback. You can make something more reflective, and it you know, just instantly see how shiny it is, etc. Here you can see this preview is taking absurdly long. So that's a sort of a short quasi answer, just to say, you know, you're never going to get it in the 3D window. You could define it with a little, I haven't looked at this for a while. You know, we could define this to have reflections in here. I wonder why the heck is it not coming on here? It's black and it's Fong. I have no idea. This is what options there are. Just haven't looked at this. Layer color, yeah, so here, yeah, there's so many settings in here. So not a great answer, but will at least give you a clue as to you know, the limitations in the 3D window, and then where you're going to have to go if you want to get it to be glossy. So sorry, I can't give you a better answer, but at least that points you in certain directions. Is that okay for the moment?
I have tried everything that you just demonstrated, and the result was the same as you had. And so I was wondering if I was doing something wrong in exploring it in the way you did. And apparently I wasn't. And the results is, as far as it can go with this particular program without an auxiliary render engine of some kind. So
the best thing, if you want high quality with, you know, reflective surfaces, more realistic, would be to learn and use one of the supplemental tools. Twinmotion is pretty easy to get a handle on. It used to be given out for free in recent years with ArchiCAD, but it's still available for pretty reasonable cost. I don't know, a few $100s. So that's what I would look at. Let's go on to the next one then, here, how to add alternative carpet designs to the rug tool. Okay, so now I'm not familiar with a rug tool, but there is certainly an object that I would use routinely.
it's an area rug tool. It's 820, I think.
All right, let me go to the object tool.
Carpet
here.
20.
All right, so I'm just going to, oh, you say carpet. All right, so we have carpet.
And they give you a little carpet, and you have two choices, and I would like to add more choices.
Okay, here's carpet 26, and you can see similar ones here, and we can see in the preview the texture. Now, how does it look at this? So if we go in to cost manufacturer, let's see, we have 3D. Where is the use picture, use custom picture? All right, so use picture, obviously it puts something in there. If we say use custom picture, then it says custom picture name, and it allows me to type in a name. Now, what is it looking for? And if I were to put in something like test, what is it going to do? So you can see test, it says, I can't find that. So it puts in this really garish, awful checkerboard pattern to let you know, I can't find what you're trying to do. All right, so let's just find something that is in the library and then talk about how you add things to the library like this. So I'm gonna, I'll just say, okay, that leaves the object settings unchanged. So when I go back in, I can tweak it. But let's look under the file menu, library manager. Now, if you're in an international or outside of the US, you might see file menu, libraries and objects, and then library manager would be off in a submenu. But library manager allows you to say, hey, what libraries are in the project? I can add libraries or add components, and I can study what's in, for example, the embedded library or the standard ArchiCAD library. Now, the standard ArchiCAD library, if I select it in the left side and then go over here, it has some things that are surface catalog. All right, so the surface catalog, and I believe that they've had this for many years, so it would be the same in version 20. It'll have things organized based on categories, and then we can go in, for example, and say, let's look at something like flooring. Here's carpet. Okay, now these are obviously not rugs. Let's try tatami or something like that, or lino. Okay, I'm going to see. Here's a fabric. Okay, let's do textile. All right, here's one that's obviously a little. We'll see whether it shows up. The name here, textile-14 space 26. I'm going to try to remember that that name, textile-14 space 26, and then it has a GSM. Now, ideally, we're not going to pick something like this. We're going to pick a picture of a carpet, but let's just try doing this here. So textile 1426, and we'll go back to the object tool, and I'll say that the custom picture is going to be textile-14 space 26. Still didn't like that. .gsm. No, it did not like it. All right, so let me go and just, I thought that I would be able to type that in. And one of the issues is that you can't pick it from the pop-up. But what I will do now is I'll go into what do you call it, the library manager, and I'll add a new texture file. So in the libraries in the project, all ArchiCAD projects have what is called the embedded library. It may have nothing in it, or it may have a bunch of stuff in it. Now I can drop files into it and also add folders. Let me just go in and find something just on my computer with the name carpet here. And there are some ones here that are probably from libraries. I just wasn't locating it, but let's just go pick one here. You can see these have the name carpet. Let's just see. Well, actually, let's see. Let me actually look at rug, because I think I know I have a folder with some rug images. Rugs, okay. All right, so here's area rug 1. If I look at it in my operating system, in my Mac, I can say, oh, that's a picture. Certainly that's an area carpet. I'm just going to copy the name here. Copy that, but I'm also going to just literally drag this in to the embedded library. So I could drag in as many of these I want. Let's just actually drag in a couple more here, and then I'll say reload and apply. So that'll make it available for library parts, etc. So I'll say okay, and we'll go now to the object tool, and I think that I just paste in this area rug 1. You can see how it's now got that picture. in there. So if I say OK and I go place it, there it is. So yeah, all right. So basically that's how you would do it, is you would go into the library manager. You would add it into the libraries that are loaded. The simplest thing is in the embedded library. You can create a folder in here. Let's see, you can create a folder like rugs here, and then you can, take these guys and move them into that. So you can now have some organization here. I'll reload this. It'll still find it. It doesn't require the path to it, that it's in a folder. It'll still locate it. But that's how you would do that. You choose custom picture, and then you make sure you get the name exactly matching the file name.
Great.
Okay. Now, by the way, I appreciate that some of you who are adding some comments that even can help me. So there is, Gary says, use the match settings below the settings in Cineware and match Cineware to basic. Let's try that. Okay. So right now we have this surface that was defined as being glossy, and supposedly reflective, but it's not really reflecting. So I'm going to go now back to the surface definitions. Find that one we were just looking at, wood flooring. Now, we were setting it up in the basic engine here. With that's the preview. If I go to the Cineware one, there's an option that says, where is it? Where's it going to be? This they've moved around. Let's see here. That's just a information match settings. All right, so you'll see something similar to this with the word match settings. In yours, it may be in a slightly different place, but match settings, it says, in this case, update Cineware settings from basic. So it's saying, hey, copy what the basic one has and put it in here. And now, look at how reflective that is. It's crazy. It's too reflective, really. So what we can do is we can go into the layers, and we can probably change the setting. Let's see, layer color, layer mask. Yeah, I'm not sure where we would change this. If I were to move this down, I want to get this sort of where it's a dull reflection as opposed to a mirror. So I'm not quite sure where reflection legacy here. If I double click now. So these are the two layers. Yeah, layer for now. I'm not quite sure where this is. So maybe Gary, who typed that in, you tell me where to do this. But I'm going to leave this alone right now in terms of like just saying I've matched this. And I will then go to the creative imaging. And I'm going to change the settings so that it's not taking as much time for this. In other words, we'll say don't do high. Let's do medium here for both of these. And then I'll say take a picture. Now let's see what that does. Now you can see down on the floor here, hey, it's reflecting. It's glossy. It's a little bit too glossy. It's like a mirror. So we just need to figure out how to make it a little less like mirrored glass on top of wood, but now you can see it's glossy. And we would move it to a different position and render it, it would look that way. And you saw that this came up, within a few seconds, so it's not nearly as painful if we just say medium rather than high here. Okay, so now Gary says, go back to the basic and adjust, then match again. Okay, so maybe that is the simplest. So we're going to go to options, surfaces. We are in wood flooring. We'll go back to the basic one. And remember, I had moved this shininess all the way up to 100. Let's make it 50 here. Move these down, a little bit there. Okay, so now, it looks a little bit more appropriate, let's say. Now, having done that, I'll go back to this one for the rendering, and I'll say match settings, update it from the basic. Yours might say match settings or something like that, or might not say update here. Here you can see it is more subtle there. And so if I were to say render this again, you can see that it's now more subtle. In here, and let's see, it is showing it, but it's not nearly as pronounced. Now, by the way, as you tweak it, you can go back and say, well, what does this one look like? You can see that one had, really reflective. This one just barely. So we just have to play around with that, and I'm sure you could get something reasonable. So how's that?
Yeah. So I set it up in the regular method, and then to get the higher glossary, go into Cine render and change it there. That's the rendering engine.
Yeah, match the settings. So I'm sure that there's different ways to go about setting that up, but that seems to be the quickest. If I do one more, I'll just one more minute, I'll go to the surfaces here. So we're in the wood flooring, go back to the basic, and let's take the shininess, this back up, take it sort of halfway back up here. And these generally mean how much light is being reflected and how, you can see how it gets darker or lighter. And, this has to do with sort of directional light versus ambient light. This, I think, is probably the critical one. This, I think, has to do with how pointed that is. I think it's the shininess here that's going to be there. So having just made that change, I'll go in and do one more. Match settings from basic, say okay, and then render again, and we'll see if we get something, sort of in between.
Yeah, that's my missing piece right there.
Yeah, all right. So it's certainly more reflective, maybe too reflective, so there may be some threshold things where, if it's above 75, all of a sudden it goes very reflective. But let's compare this to the original one. So the original one was just slightly more intense. This one is slightly less. So it seems to be some sort of threshold thing that we can tweak. All right, let's see. I'll see if I can answer one more of your questions before going on to a different one, if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
All right. How to add pictures to the picture tool. That'll be exactly the same as the rug tool. You load them into the, what do you call it, the library, and you then make sure you have the name and type in or paste in the name for the picture tool. So the 3D picture tool.
Embedded library.
Yeah. And then we have how to create an object such as a chair by assembling pieces and then hold together as a block. Also, along with this ability to change the color or texture of the components. All right, I'm going to give you I'll call it a 3-minute demonstration of that, which will get, I think, give you some clarity. So I'm going to go into this area. I will create a little table. So I'm going to use the column tool. I'll say that we're going to do some, let's see, round columns here. They're going to be made out of wood here. So I'll just call it wood trim here. And these are going to be not 1 foot thick, but 2 inches in diameter. And they're going to go up. They're not going to be, linked here. And we'll just take them up to 2 feet for the table level. And I'll just create one, and then I'll select that and drag a copy. And then I'll select both of those and drag another copy there. All right, now I have 4 legs. I'm going to go and just do a slab. In this case, I'll say that it's going to be a simple slab made out of some type of wood. And we'll just use a different wood here. So millwork, something like that. And I'll just draw a box over the top of it. Now I want to make sure that it's sitting on top of the legs. So I'll say that it's going to be let's see, this is the height. So we're going to say it's 2 feet 2, and it's going to be 2 inches thick. And let's just see what happens if I did that right. I now have a table here. And just to make sure that it's not totally, ordinary, I will go and round off the ends here. Let's see if I can get this to recognize my cursor position here. And it's going to be easier if I do that on the plan. Just that angle is, but we'll take. Let me just actually make it sort of an unusual shape. All right, so now how do I turn this into an object that I can use repeatedly? Well, I'm going to select these elements. Now, by the way, if I click in this area, I'm starting to drag the floor. If I don't want to do that, I can turn off the quick select. Then when I click in this area, it's drawing a selection rectangle, and I can select these guys. Now, I accidentally selected thing. Did it select it? No, it didn't actually. Here's these 5 things. There's 4, what do you call it, legs and the tabletop. So I have them selected. Go to the File menu, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection as Object. Okay, so you can save things as other types of elements that then can be used as subcomponents of elements like a cabinet door or a handle that you put on a door, or you can save what you draw as a door or window. But in this case, I'll just say it's going to be an object. I'll give it a name, table 1 here. It says, it's giving me a warning that you probably won't see in yours, basically saying that it has certain information, but there's some stuff in the library part that it will not retain. Basically, what is it built from? It'll look like wood, but it won't act the same as wood if you were to pass construction elements near it. Now you notice these things here that say surface 1, wood trim, surface 2, wood flooring, generic exterior. So these are the surfaces that are currently in use here. Now the wood trim, I made as legs. I'm going to call this legs, and surface 2, wood flooring. I think that this is probably the top, but I'll just guess that it's the top, and I'll leave this one as surface 3. Whatever you name it will be a clue when you have the library part for how to change it to look somewhat different. So right now it's going to have these appearances, and we can change that here, or we can change that later. Similarly, we can do some things with the pens here. Now I'm just going to say OK. Now what did I do? I just said save it as a library part. I did a little bit of tweaking of the names of things, and now if I go to the object tool and I go click, you can see here is something looking similar. It has 4 handles here, as well as the center one. So it's not easy to snap to it in the same way that this is, but this element is all of that above. So let's just take a look in 3D and go and look and say, what do we have? Well, it looks pretty similar. Now, if I select this, let me make sure I put back our quick select, so then I can select when I'm hovering over it. I can go in and say, what about the surfaces? Well, if I make the top, I'm not sure, here, let's just say that the top is, a red color. That didn't seem to do it. Let's try this one. I might have misidentified. No. So let me just check blue. Okay, blue did seem to change the legs. Now red isn't working on this. So there may be something related to the building material top here. So I won't have time to explore all of these things. There's some things that are may need some experimentation, but you can see that in general, there will be some controls for variations here. Now, you don't have controls over size, like how thick the dimensions of these are, how thick the top is, the shape of the top. That would require a lot more sophistication, but this is very straightforward to just say, hey, I like what I've got. I want to be able to put it in repeatedly. I like it to be in a schedule and say I have 8 of these tables as opposed to a whole bunch of slabs and columns. And that's the basics of creating an object that can show up in 3D and on plan and in schedule.
Okay, great.
Okay. So that, I think we'll have to move on to some other questions, but I think these were good. They're not quite beginner, say beginner to intermediate questions. Yeah, maybe we'll just call them intermediate questions, because you can do a whole lot of stuff in ArchiCAD without knowing how to create your own objects or create your own surfaces. So you're already producing stuff. You want to be able to get some controls over, the image.
These are just sort of loose ends. Thank you very much. This answers a lot of questions all at once for me. I appreciate your time and helping.
No, you're welcome. Glad to do that. And all right, so let's go on to some other questions here. So Tom, I'll leave your line open, and you can just mute yourself using the microphone icon. If you do have something else that comes up, feel free to ping me there, or just open up your line. All right, so I know Katrina sent me a very rich, complex question. We definitely will spend some time on that. Let me see. First of all, is Katrina in the room? Yeah, you are. Okay, so Katrina, let me open up your line, and let's see. Katrina, will you be able to stay on for the whole call? So you'll need to click on the microphone icon, and hopefully you're near the computer, because it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yes, I can stay on if you want to hit something else first.
Okay, good, because yours is going to take a little while. So
Okay.
let me see if I can get some more basic questions out of the way. And I'll leave your line open. You can just mute it by clicking the microphone icon. Let's see, so complex profiles here. Okay, this is a very simple one. And let's see, Randy's on the line. Randy, yes, you are. Okay, so Randy, your line is open.
Hi.
Hey, so by the way, where are you calling in from?
Randall, Minnesota.
Okay, so you're Randy from Randall.
Right.
Okay, cool. Your question was, you create complex profiles in your template and you can show it with multiple surfaces on the extrusion, but some of your client templates, it only shows one surface. So let's take a look at complex profiles. Now, what are these walls, or these beams, or what are they?
Where I noticed it was on a wall, but I believe it actually is the same for a beam. And then I've tried it with using a complex profile for a rail as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And
let's take a look.
I'm thinking there's some sort of setting that turns that on and off or something, but I haven't been able to find it.
All right. So we have, with walls, we have 3 different types of walls: basic, composite, and complex profiles. So basic ones are made out of one element, like concrete or wood or generic, and they are basically this uniform in cross section and as they go from one base level to a top. Composites, multiple skins, so you have cladding, maybe it's brick or stucco on the outside, and you have some framing and some interior cladding, drywall, etc. Now, complex profiles, you're basically defining a series of elements that define a cross section. So let me just select complex profiles, and we'll see what we have built into the standard ArchiCAD US environment for 26 here. And so I'll go into wall profiles, and we'll see one that says wall. This is a second floor one. They don't provide a whole lot here. If I open up master template, we'd see a whole lot, a lot more examples, but this will give us enough to work with. I'm just going to draw a wall, a single wall here, just to look at it. Okay, now as I look at this here on plan, we can see some, well, it's rather odd, and there are things I notice about Graphisoft templates that they've never fixed. For example, this is supposed to be insulation here. If I, well, actually, let me deal with your question first, and then I'm going to deal with this one, which is annoying here. But let's take a look at this in 3D. So we can see here that this element is made up of a bunch of different components. There's a plate and rim joists here and bottom plate, etc. We've got the drywall, etc. Now, if and each of them has a different color, different surface appearance. If I select this and go to the surface overrides and say I would like to override the surfaces, you'll notice that all of the outer surfaces now are uniform. See how they've all done this. I don't have control over them individually. Let me just change this to something override red here. You can see this is all exposed surfaces are red. This is actually translucent, so it's a little confusing. Let's pick one that's say let's pick something stucco. Okay. All right. Now, the stucco is rather dark, but it is, you can see it's all the same. Now, if I select this and turn off, let me just zoom in on it and turn off this override. Now you can see that they are distinct surfaces. So the reason why this is the case, and it's different than when we have, let's look at one of these composite walls. If I select these two composite walls and override the outer surface with something like, let's say plywood. All right, you can see that there's plywood here and plywood there, but on the inside, it is not plywood. Let's just select the two of them and say the inside, let's select the two of them. We have an option to say, hey, I'd like the inside surface to be overridden, and I'd like it to be, let's do something just so that it really stands out color-wise, metal, gold. All right, you can see how it's gold now there. So with composites, we do have an inside and an outside, and it's very simple because they're uniform extrusions that we just take from bottom to top. Whereas complex profiles, what do we have? We have a whole we have, in general terms, as many pieces as we need. Now, where are the surfaces defined for complex profiles? They are defined in the Edit Selected Composite or Profile window. In this case, because it is a complex profile, that command brings up the Profile Manager, and we can see these elements. Now, this outer skin here says it is made out of wood siding. That's what the line work shows here. And it's going to use the, let's say, the appearance of what wood siding is without overriding it. Now I can override it, and this would affect only this one skin. So let me just make this something, I'll just make it bright yellow just so we can see it.
Okay, so now what you're looking at right there, where it says override surfaces, in the files that I've been dealing with the clients I'm working with, the uniform and various checkboxes I can't do anything with them.
Um,
That
okay,
setting
I'd
is
have to
not
see it.
available.
If you send me a copy of a file with this, I can look at it. But let me just finish then this explanation here.
Okay,
So
all right.
I'm save this definition and let's take a look in 3D. And you can see I've just made the that one surface yellow. Of course, I didn't affect the other one, but I had to do it in the dialog box for the profile manager to do it. If I instead select it here, I'm affecting all of the outer surfaces. Now we do have a separate control for the ends. So for example, the ends right now, you can see that, oh, there's drywall, there's insulated space, etc. If I override that, you can see it makes the entire end look like it's one uniform surface. So that's your controls that are limited in a complex profile to the ends and possibly the all of the wrap that it's extruded. So if you use this, you won't see differences. Okay, so that's now the option here. We had this. If I say edit this, going back here, I wanted to show this one. So this cut through, which is what we see in section, but also we see on plan. This is it says it's made out of a building material called wood structural insulation. So it's intended to be, you know, an area that you have framing, but you have insulation, and you do generally, in this case, want to show the insulation. Well, when we have that set up, this this building material needs to be tweaked a little bit. If I go to building materials and say wood structural insulation, the fill, which is this sort of squiggly thing, right now in this US template that Graphisoft provides, says, hey, I'm just going to draw it sort of just arbitrarily, you know, horizontally, just whatever these squiggles are, to get it to look like a insulation symbol should be. We need to switch this to fit to skin. This will affect all every place where insulation using this building material is done. When I say okay here, now that looks a lot more, you know, like what it should. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. You know, it is insulation between, you know, this, I guess, cut element and, you know, whatever that's going to bump into. We're not seeing an outline on it, but this would show the insulation there. And if we turned off the visibility of some of the these lines, we have I just wanted to get rid of this line here that's visually, no, stretch modifiers. There it is. Okay, so basically this is what it would look like in the cross section here. Now, by the way, yeah, it's interesting. So this has got a line through it. It's would no work there, and yet it's one element. I have to look at that because traditionally, okay, you can see these guys that look like you know, a standard X for a single piece of, you know, framing, or, you know, in this case, a plate, are actually made out of 4 separate pieces in order to get the X. I'm not quite sure how it's getting this diagonal here, because that's actually useful. There is there actually a line there? No, it's that would no work. Okay. All right. So anyway, that just corrected this issue in the Graphisoft standard template in the US, and this in this project and any projects that this might be a template for would now have a better version of the installation. So how's that?
Oh, well, that's a good explanation of the basics there, but I'm still baffled as to why I can't override the surfaces in the
All right,
profile.
well, you'll have to send me a file.
Okay.
And that during the call, I might have time to open it up and just sort of say, no, what's different here?
Okay.
All right, Randy, thanks for sending that in. And if you do send me another one, just type it into the questions area, say, hey, I sent you that other file.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so more quick question before I get into the one that Katrina had, which is going to be a longer explanation. James Rooney. Okay, so here's James Rooney asking to create a composite one. ArchiCAD 20, it'll be the same in 26, aside from that little thing with folders that I mentioned. Let's see, this is James Rooney. Is James on the call? I don't see a James or Jim Rooney. Okay, so he doesn't appear to be on the call at the moment. We'll see if you are on the call under another name or something like that, then just type into the questions area, let me know. Yeah, I don't see him. All right, so we'll possibly come back to his question. So Jeff Manley, you're in the coaching program, so I can answer that there. But briefly, your question is, can you bring an ArchiCAD file from Revit so it will have walls, windows, and roofs? You cannot open a Revit file directly in ArchiCAD and have that happen. You can open a Revit file in later versions of ArchiCAD and have it look like the model, but it will be a bunch of objects that give the geometry. If you want it to be walls, windows, doors, etc., the Revit user will have to export as IFC. So basically save as or export file to IFC. And then the IFC file can be brought into ArchiCAD, and IFC is an interchange format, and it will carry across things like this is a wall, this is a window in a wall, etc. And it will at least be reasonably editable in the ways that we're used to. So that's the very short answer. We can explore it a little further. If you do have the opportunity to get a Revit user to export the IFC, we can test it, but I don't have Revit. So, and you supplied a Revit file, so we can't do anything with it unless somebody exports it to IFC. All right, so that's a short answer for Jeff there. This one, yeah, this one is an oddball one. I'll just see if Monroe's online and at least give a brief answer. No, he is not. He wants to do the Fibonacci spiral by entering an equation. Is there a way to do this within the software? Not that I know of. Maybe if you connect up ArchiCAD to Grasshopper or one of these parametric tools, you may be able to have it do the graphing and then bring it in. The only way I could think of is to plot a series of points based on coordinates that you get from solving the equation, and then connect those points with a polyline. But there's no, so it'll approximate it based on a series of sample points. So anyhow, let's see. So Ivan Myers had two questions. Okay, so this is one that I don't have a great answer for, but I'll give you a proper answer in terms of what we can and can't do. Now, I see there's some person who is in with just the initial I. I don't know if that's Ivan Myers. I'm going to open up that person I in case it is Ivan. Your line is open, whoever signed in with an I. And you can tell me if you are Ivan. All right. Go ahead and click the microphone if you're there. All right, no success at the moment. So we have, oh, here's the file for Randy. Okay, we can come back to that. James was not on. Monroe, this was the Fibonacci. Holly, we're going to get to later on today. Katrina. Okay, here's non-orthogonal dimensions. This one, oh, and this is another one from Ivan Myers, who I just had, and he does not appear to be logged in. So, all right. So, Okay, well, let's get back to the Randy's question. I do see, let me check if there's any ones that have been typed in. So Tom Palmer had a comment about earlier, this was 20 minutes ago. Let me open up your line, Tom. You always have some good insights here. Thomas Palmer, why am I not? It looks like he left. At least I don't see him on there. All right, his comment was, I sometimes keep a story well below the project levels where I build objects, keep the parts for any changes, then resave. So that's a tip for all of you, but specifically for, I guess, Tom Rodden, who was asking, how do you create an object? What you want to do, Tom, and I'll just explain this waving my hands, is you want to create, like what I did, something that's useful, select those elements, save them as an object, and then afterwards you're going to just be placing the object around rather than copies of the pieces. Take those pieces, put them in some place that you keep in the file. Tom Palmer suggests putting it on a negative story that you don't normally look at, and maybe you exclude in your 3D views and your sections, etc. And that way you, if you ever need to make a variation of it, you can go, like that tabletop was a weird shape and maybe I want a different top shape, or I want to have legs that are thicker. You know, I can go back to the raw materials, change them, or make a copy of them and change them, and then save a new version of the object. Putting it on a negative story is fine. I like putting it on a layer that's hidden, so that way it can literally be in a convenient location, but not seen unless you want to see it. So in Master Template, I have a layer specifically for object creation. And while you might have things initially on other layers, my suggestion would be to select all the elements that are part of that object, put them on this special layer, and then hide that layer until you need it. You might also group those elements so that it's easy to select them and move them around without having to, worry about things. Okay, so I see a comment from, or a question. Mohammed Mokran says, hey everybody, it's my first time here. Will there be another webinar for advanced users? Well, I like mixing up questions. We're going to have a more advanced question shortly with Katrina. But if you do have advanced questions in general, you can join my ArchiCAD coaching program. In fact, whether you're beginner or advanced, in the ArchiCAD coaching program, I do this every week as opposed to once every few months. So I'm be happy to help you. Also, I do one-on-one coaching, consulting, for people who, you want the answer now, you don't want to wait and sit on a call. You can pay me, by the hour. Yeah, join the ArchiCAD coaching program. Go to archicadtraining.com/coaching, and you'll see information about it. All right. But if you do have a question, Mohammed, that's advanced and you wanted to submit it right now, go ahead and, we might be able to fit it in. Okay, so I see Randy, you sent the file, and David Ennis says, I would love to also know how to globally change default fonts. Okay, well, David, let's, since that question did come up, I will I'll open up your line, if I can, David Ennis here. David Ennis, you're saying, hey, you'd like to also know how to change the font for all defaults across all tools and settings. It's Arial, but I'd like something else. So David, are you there? Okay, so your audio is very faint. Can you speak up a little? Okay, it sounds like you're in a tunnel, like as if your microphone is on a laptop that's got the case closed, or that you're sitting in a phone booth. But I can hear you, so we'll work with that. Okay, so David, and was it Ian, the person who submitted the question? So I'm on the plan here. Okay, So the short answer is there's no global setting for font style. I really wish they would add that. What that means is that if you want to have things in a different font, you have to go into the text tool and say the default font that I want is something else, okay? And then the next time you use the text tool, it'll have that font. And you go into the label tool and you go and you'll again change that. Now, of course, I don't have to open up the settings here. I can just go to this in many cases. If I go to, the dimension tool, I can change that. So you just go through all of these tools to do it. Now, some of them have multiple places where it's done. So for example, let's see, what might be a good example? Let's go to the section tool. All right, the section tool has something about the marker text style. Okay, and this is Arial, and I'd have to change it there. But there also may be some, some things related to story levels. So this would be within the actual section. And we have the story marker text, override text style alignment. There may be some places buried within here that you have to change. Anyway, unfortunately, you have to go through all of these components. Now you can save favorites. So if I do have text, and let's just say I change this from Arial to some Baskerville here, I can go and say I'd like to save the text. So you can see this is Arial. These are all favorites. So if I go to, let's see, I guess if I open up the text settings, then I can go and save a new favorite here. I'm just gonna have to tell a staff member that I have that I cannot talk right now. So let me just tell her that here. All right, okay. Now, where this gets even more annoying is that you literally, if you have a project that already exists and you want to change the style, you literally have to select all of the text elements that you've already placed and then change them, and all of the labels and all of the other notes that you have, and change them. And you have to do that in every single viewpoint, meaning like every story, every section, every elevation, etc. And your layout masters, all of those, you have to go and select the thing. So there's no setting that says, hey, I'd like to switch from Arial to another font. Graphisoft in 26 said, we're making it easier to manage your projects, and they've added some cool things, but this is one of those basic things that's never been done. And so on a practical basis, take the time to set up your template with the fonts that you want. And then whenever you start a new project, those fonts will be the default for the elements that you draw. And then, then it becomes, well, then you can get what you want without having to redo it over and over again. So there you go, David.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I wish I could give you better news there. Anyway, that's, to the best of my understanding, what the only way to do it. If there's if someone has another way to do it, let me know. All right, so let me go and see here. Okay, John Walker. So we have some questions being added, which is great. With a composite roof or wall section, is there a way to assign individual layers as existing demo or new and a renovation filter for help with remodeling work? No, sorry. So what does that mean? Let me just demonstrate that briefly. And let me open up your line, John. Again, trying to get through some quicker questions that are useful. Then I can take Katrina has a big question that'll, we'll spend at least half an hour on, maybe longer. So this is John Walker. All right, John Walker, your line is open.
Yep. I'm here.
Hey, so I'm in ArchiCAD here, and you were talking about a roof or wall section or something like that. So let me just demonstrate the real basics, because some of you are, let's say, on the call are more new. So what I'm going to do, I'll just split this wall here. So now we've got two pieces of wall. I'll change this wall from wall generic to, let's see, I don't know, some other type of wall here. Maybe make it a little bit more dramatic. Well, that's rather weird there. Let's see, can I see this one is 5.5 gypsum. Actually, what I want to do is change the cladding. So, and I hate the fact, and people have complained that you cannot see the full name anymore on some of these things until you hover over them, and that, you know, so I can't tell what's going on. So we have one that's exterior changes, sheathing, siding, gypsum. Okay. All right. Let me just actually make these both the same. And now I'm going to define a new one with a different cladding here. So this is a composite here. It's got insulation. It's got cladding of a certain type. I'll right click and say I'd like to edit this and say, you know what? We have sheathing, siding, gypsum here, and we're going to, or here's siding on the outside there. I'm going to create a new one that's going to be a duplicate, and you know, let's say, what might we want to replace the sheathing and siding with? What would you potentially replace sheathing, siding, you know, with? Can you give me
It's not just replacement. It's like, let's say you want to strip off siding and you want to add continuous insulation and then put on stucco or something, you know, as part of the remodel.
Right. So then we're going to say the new one is going to have insulation plus stucco, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I've now got a copy of this. It's a little hard to tell the difference because it truncates the name. That's really annoying. I'm going to say that we're going to strip off the siding of this. So I'm going to replace it with some continuous insulation. So we'll just, again, one of the nice things in 26 is that I can type in, you know, something like insulation. Then I can say, oh, what type of this insulation? We want fiberglass,
Yeah.
foam board, what?
Foam board, you know, you're putting on rigid insulation to meet code.
All right. Okay, so rigid insulation, how thick?
2 inches.
2 inches. Okay, and then we're going to add another skin on top of it on the outside. And what is that going to be?
Stucco.
So stucco. So here we just select that. So I love how you can type that in and quickly find it. Of course, it's not going to be 2 inches. It's going to be what, 1 inch or what?
3/4, 1 inch. It's fine.
We'll say 3/4. Okay. All right. So now this is a different one. I'm just defining it. I haven't placed it anywhere, but that means that I can say that this wall, I'm going to show them side by side. But let me make these two walls. We'll just say that the reference line, we're going to say is not the outside face, is going to be core outside.
Right.
Now, it's moved in place based on what I drew, but let's just say that I've drawn it with the core of the face of framing on the outside. Now I'm going to take this one as an example, and we'll change it to the new one, which might be just below it. Is this sheathing? No, it might be just above it. So it is a 5.5 inch. Yeah, here's the sheathing, insulation, stucco, and gypsum. There we go. All right, so we can see the two side by side. Now what we really want to do is say that this is existing and being replaced with that. Now, unfortunately, we can't say I'm only replacing the skins here. So let's just look at essentially what you have to do if you want to use the ArchiCAD's renovation filter. So I'm going to go in. We have our renovation palette tucked in down here. That's where I like placing it. You can have it floating in space, or you can dock it down, in a convenient location here. Now, I'll say that this element here is, if I say it's existing, it'll stay there forever. If I say it's demo, then it'll disappear when I say, hey, let me look at what's new there. Now I'm going to actually, we'll just say, simplest thing is to drag a copy of this right on top of itself. So now there's another copy here, and this new one, this is going to be the new one, and it's going to be that new version, which was sheathing, insulation, stucco. Yeah, there. Okay. Now, if I switch to say, what's the existing plans, you can see this is existing. Now, the other one that I had here was designated as new. I'll say, what about demo plans? This is what's being removed. It's not, we obviously are not going to remove the framing, but this is the only thing we can do, is then say, hey, the floor plans have this. So if I were to make this one, well, anyway, if I go back and forth between existing, sorry, no, this one is new. If I go back and forth to existing plans, here, let's just say, select this and stretch that down. I don't know how far I need to do it, but now we can go from existing to the new one, and you can see how it does switch effectively.
The challenge for me is when you're trying to do quantity takeoffs.
Yeah,
And you don't want to do a quantity of what you're leaving behind.
Yeah, you cannot do it. Okay, now the workaround is you can have two walls. So you can basically, or actually it would be three. We'd have existing to remain. So if I select this wall type and we say edit selected composite profile, I can say that I'd like to duplicate this here. And we're going to take off the sheathing plus siding here. So it's just going to be the gypsum on the inside and the framing, right? And
right.
Take out the one. I think that the one was probably what made it a copy here. So I'll say this is the core. To do that, I actually now have to go and highlight and remove the skin and remove that skin. So now we just have the framing there. So this is now a core wall here. And I won't go through the whole process, but because I think you probably get it, we just say that this one is going to be the one that's thinnest here.
So it's definitely a workaround. It's not built in where you can just turn layers from new to existing.
No. Now, so what you do is you have one wall here, you have another wall you draw on the outside there that is the cladding that's going to be removed, and another one that's the cladding that's going to be added. And then those cladding walls have demo and new attributes, whereas this is existing to remain. And when you put in a window or a door, you'll have to punch out extra holes in the cladding because you won't automatically get them. So it's a pain.
Yeah. Well, you know what I know. It's a pain.
Yep. All right. Okay, so John, that's as good as I can get there. I see a couple other questions here, and then I want to go to Katrina. So let's see, Mamadi, trying to get my head around the revision tool. I need some help with that. The revision tool, probably won't have time for it, Mamadi, but let's see how long it takes for Katrina, and we can talk about that. Tom Rodden, okay, working on the recreation of an early 20th century brownstone New York mansion from existing plans, creating thick exterior composite walls, does not match or blend. Okay, so we'd have to look at this in detail, Tom. So there are, some issues with cleaning up different types of things to each other. You're mentioning that certain things don't match or blend. So obviously I can help you with that, but we may not have time in today's call, and you're welcome to join the ArchiCAD coaching program if you want regular help with these things. Paul Adams says, I'd be inclined to build the walls to be kept as one item. The existing siding to be removed could be demolished and the new insulated stucco could be in the same place. Yeah, so I think, Paul, let me just open up your line. I think you're basically saying what I ended up, sketching out here. So Paul, open that line. So Paul, your line is open. Going once. Paul, are you there? All right, so Paul Adams, I've opened up.
Hey there.
Hey, so did you agree with what I was doing here, where we have sort of the base wall that's going to remain as one, and then we have a demo and a new version that's going to be thin cladding skins?
Yeah, I just started typing that in, and then you went ahead and demoed exactly what I was thinking. So, and that business with the openings is a nuisance, especially when you start tweaking them just enough to be out of sync on the elevation. You move the interior wall window, but the exterior cladding one's off by 2 inches.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, that's the way we have to work around the limitation. Again, I'd love to see Graphisoft come up with a way to have components of an element defined as existing, demo, and new, like what you're talking about. All right, so let me go then to Katrina's question. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. We had, Randy, you sent the profile, because hopefully if I open this in 3 or 4 minutes, I might be able to figure out what's going on. So Randy, your line, I think, should still be open, and you sent me a file. Sent the file, complex profile question file, download it. All right, what version of ArchiCAD are you in, Randy? Randy, your line is unlocked, but I don't see him on here. So he might have had to duck out. Oh well. I'll just download it and whoops, wrong place. But I'll if Randy comes back and we have time, I will look at it. All right. So Katrina, excuse me. Katrina, your line is open, and I have your file open in a copy of ArchiCAD, I believe. Are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. All right, so you have an interesting question. It's one that is got a lot of complexity to it. Let me find where you wrote it out. Here's the PLN, and here is your question. Okay. All right. So keynotes and specifications. Okay, you have some schedules set up for planned keynotes for each floor level, and you've sent me the file so we can take a look at that. The tags are not linked or smart. You write the notes specific to the project in the schedule, and then we place the tag with the corresponding number on the floor plan. So let's take a look at that part first, what you're doing. And I know you want to get some automation, or you're wondering what sort of automation might be possible. So let's take a look here. So where do you have your schedule? Is it on a layout sheet? Is it next to the plan here, or what?
It should be, let's see, there's a folder called Notes under CDs.
All right,
And
so
then there's
notes.
schedule.
And give me which one should I look at right now?
CD, first floor, second floor, any of those.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but which one of these notes here? You have some things.
Yeah, if you go down, it says keep going down.
CD keynotes first floor?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so what is this? We'll look at it here. All right, so we are looking in a schedule. Each one of these items is being reported by ArchiCAD based on a scheme. So when I look at the scheme, it says you are placing objects that have a certain library part name. And is that all? They're just a certain library part name with some other settings. You don't have any layer thing. So you're listing anything that uses this particular multi-liter label. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically those leaders with the circles on the floor plans are linked, and I might be using the wrong terms, but they're linked to the schedule to create the box for the schedule. But then we go in and type in the box what I want to write, and then
Okay.
someone else goes and moves that.
All right, so you're basically listing some annotation elements here. So when you place an annotation element of this type, it shows up in the schedule. So let's select this and say, hey, I'd like to select this on the plan so we can look at it.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, so when you have a schedule with listing, whether it's windows, objects, or whatever, you can use this thing saying select it, and it'll actually zoom to it. In theory, actually, well, it's zooming to all of the ones that are listed. Now I can see some black dots there. Let me just do a tentative drag. If I say drag.
Yeah, I think those black dots are library items that I have in.
So there was something in here that I caught my eye. Let me just drag this again because we've got, oh, okay. And this one in the lower left here. So let me just hit escape. So it's something in this area here.
Yeah, so on each floor level, we've got these tags set up that are set up to those schedules, and there's nothing written in those schedules.
Okay.
Well, I have a few standard notes that I often use, so I go a few that are already written, and then I go through and write them, and then we move these or copy them to that location on the floor plan.
All right, so we have a graphic here. It's done using a tool or I guess this is an object as opposed to a label. The object here is called multi-leader label 25. There are ones for other versions of ArchiCAD, and it's designed to answer the question of, hey, I have some text that I want to do possibly with a frame around it, like a circle or some other shape, and I want to point at possibly more than one thing, or possibly some, have some sort of squiggly thing. So it's like a label, except it's an object that's not associated with an element. So it's not associated with a specific wall or a window or column or whatever, but you can point at, that. And in addition to having some text, the 101 here, which is put in here, the title, there would be, you have some other information. Where is that information? Is it in the classification and properties, perhaps? Where
as
is
far as I know, I just go to that schedule and then type in on the schedule.
Okay, well, that's interesting. All right, well, let's just see where that is there. Okay, so the 101 clearly is there. I'm just going to drag a copy of this. Actually, let me just select just the one. I'll drag a copy of this up to here and just go in and say, what if I were to make this copy have, Eric, okay? All right, so we can see the name changes there. And this should show up on the schedule just as well, right? So let's go back to the schedule here. So this schedule is reporting annotation elements. Why am I not seeing? So the 101 seems to have disappeared, even though I didn't change it. That is very odd. View, refresh, rebuild. Wow, that is, here's merge items. Let me just unmerge them. No, first floor keep notes. The scheme, as it's an object, there might be text blocks length 8.10. What is less than this? Interesting. Okay, I'm not sure what is this 8.10. So this is the length of the text box here. Okay.
Honestly, this is, what we used 5 years ago when we first started using ArchiCAD, didn't know what we were doing. played around, set stuff up. It's kind of been
We
working
just changed
since
this
then.
because maybe those somehow got longer when I did something there, say 15. There, yeah, now here's the 101s. They popped back in, and we can see some other things that popped in, G, etc. Why don't we have the Eric one? That's interesting. Okay, my guess is that the text that's being shown is also being described on the plan here in a different place. In other words, this probably has a 101 somewhere. So we've got a title here, but do we have an ID? We don't have it there. Here's the length. So that was the something related to this label frame. Where would all parameters here? So yeah, it's sort of odd what you're doing. I mean, I've never seen this, although I understand that in general terms what you're doing. All right. Title, is it title what's showing, or is there something else that we're not seeing?
I think it's the title that's showing. I don't know if there's something in the schedule that eliminates it from showing up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I don't see anything. So let me just open this one more time and just change it to a shorter name. Maybe there's something related to this, E10 or something like that. And in this one, if I take this 101, there's 813 here, and 8.13. Okay. All right. So let's just see if possibly it has to do with some sizing things that you were using as a criteria in an odd way. Yeah, I'm still not seeing that in that scheme there. All right, but bottom line is, what are you doing? You're creating so you have custom text one. Yeah, okay, so this is, all right, so you're doing something that's really, well, you've gotten the job done. You know, you've gotten a schedule out there. If I put it back to merge items, then we're having just a list of these. And even if you put 101 in a bunch of places, it's still going to show only once in here because it's got the same information there. Now, the custom text that you can edit here in the schedule is not showing up on the note, and that is an issue because you're using a feature within the schedule that gives you access to data or information related to that marker, but it's not visible in the marker itself. So it's, let's say, not going to be as intuitive as you'd like. So let me just start with one thing that will probably help, and then I can build on this. So we'll sort of go through a series of steps. So I'm going to go and create a new scheme. So we'll say this for Keynote's first floor. I'll say new one. It's going to be a duplicate of it, and we'll just give it my name here. All right. So this is now going to be identical, but I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to add a field here. Now, custom text is one that is, I didn't see where we could access that. If we type in the word custom, we can see here are a bunch of these things, and this one is a little bit grayed out because it already is placed in there. But I don't really want to use these because they're only accessible in the schedule. Now, if I go into general, see here's the custom text. Let's see, we probably have some sort. Let me just type in search for note. No, we don't have note. We have text. Here's context. Description. How about description? All right. So this right now we're looking at what exists in the standard environment. And it looks like you have some stuff from BIM 6X. So I don't know if you're using theirs, their template, or just have imported some stuff from it.
Yeah, I started out using their template, but I don't have I don't have specifications for materials or anything set up, and I'm not sure how to go about doing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm starting to think whether I should use this. But this might be usable, but let me go back out and say what we probably want to do here. I'll just say okay. So I want to start not so much from the beginning, but add a fundamental resource to your environment in this project, and we can easily bring it into other ones. So in versions of ArchiCAD from maybe 19 on up, there is a concept of properties that you can create for any element, and you can say that what do you call it? You can use them as schedules, and you can also access them when you have the elements selected. So I'll go to Property Manager. We'll see there's a whole bunch of line items. We can see that, there's things like description. That's the one I was looking at under BIM 6X. So this is a set of information that the people at BIM 6X created, and these are very useful here, but I'm going to create one from scratch just to demonstrate this. So we'll, in this terms of the keynote, what do you title that section here? You've got, you don't have a title for it. We want to call it keynote reference or something like that. Or actually, let's just say that I'm going to create a new property, and I'll call it keynote reference. Actually, we'll call it keynote, and then this would be the reference if we were to do it. So we'll just call it keynote. All right, and I'm going to say that this is going to be under general ratings. Let's see, we'll just say general ratings here. So there's a concept of a name where you just put some information, and there's a concept of which group, which folder that's located. And there's one that's built into the standard environment of ArchiCAD standard template that's called general rating. So I'll just create one called keynote. Now, what is this one? It shows up here. I made it all caps, but it doesn't have to be. Right now, it says that it is a string. So what is a string? It's a string of characters. So it's just basically text, as opposed to a number or a length or something like that. So I'll say this could take any number of characters, or a reasonable number of characters that you type in. Now, where will it be available? I'll say it's available for all types of elements. Walls, windows, doors, beams, anything. We'll just say it's available. Okay, we could be more specific, but right now I'm just going to add that. So I've just defined a new data storage area, a field, a property field. So I'll say okay. Now we won't see anything change here, but what I'll now do is I'll go into the scheme settings for my new schedule, and I will add a field, and I'll just type in keynote, and you can see here's the one I just created, and I'll say add it, and it now sits next to or in the list here. Now doing that won't change anything specifically, except that you'll see now that there's there's an area for this. Now, okay, so the extra wrinkle that we have to do is we have to go and define these elements as part of a certain classification in order to get access to it. So this is one other technical thing. It's not hard to do, but it's going to be just slightly confusing. I have to go into the plan, and let's just say I want to select all of these guys that we're using for this purpose. So first of all, I'll select one of them. I'll go to the edit menu and say find and select, and say I would like to select elements that are similar to this one, objects, but I want to be a little bit more specific. I'd like to select ones that have a certain name, and it says multi-liter label, and that's probably sufficient. I'll just say all of the objects that are multi-liter labels, I'll say select them, and there's 151 of them. The ones that you have on the side that are sort of placeholders, and then any ones that you're actually using in here. And what I'm going to do is with these selected, I'm going to go to their settings, and say that I'd like to give them a classification. So you're not using classifications in properties right now. You have two different classification systems here. I think this is the one that's the more current one here. Why is it not oh, I have to check this. And then I can say it is going to be, what is it? I think we do annotation. No. What would be elements? This is, okay. No, it's a construction element. Not really a construction element. It's going to be an annotation element. Just they make this sometimes more complicated than it should be. System furniture. I just have to pick something, anything that's in the standard environment that is that has classification. So for right now, I'm just going to call it furniture. These are obviously not furniture, but by calling it something, we're now going to see down in this bottom area, the word keynote is available. Okay, so I've just defined something that can take information called keynote. And of course, not all of these notes are going to have the same information, but now when I select any one of them, I will be able to put that in. Now, having defined these as being a certain classification, now when I go into this, we should see that I can actually edit this. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just go and select this text here. And I guess I have to do Command C for the copy, and then I should be able to paste this. And we'll, all right, so now what I've got here is I've copied the same information that it was there. I'm going to go and just do the same thing for this copy and paste. Now, why am I doing this? Because I would prefer, and we'll just need to make this a little wider. I'll go into this little button here and say that the keynote needs to be similar length. I'll just do the same length. So now we can see it says wide. Now, why am I doing that? Because if I now go and say, select the 101s, remember I did this earlier, and go back to that area. Where is it? Here. So if I select this 101 or all of them, and I open this up, we're going to see that in the, where is it? Here, this is the note. Okay. So whatever note we have here in Keynote is going to show up in the schedule. So now, although that was a rather complicated thing to get it set up, if we do this in the right way, for every note that you place, you can literally go and define a number and put in some text that's going to show up in the schedule. You don't have to do it in the schedule. You can do it on the individual elements. So let me go and now generalize this a little bit further. So I'm going to say, take this and I'm going to drag a copy of it here. And let's say that this one is going to be, I don't think we had 100, right? So we'll just say 100 here. And we'll say that this copy has a different note. So I'm just putting in test note. All right. So now this is something I'm defining right on the fly. When I go into here, here's 100 and here's the test note. Okay. So now these things can be placed anywhere in your drawing, and you can define the note that's going to show up in the schedule. You following me?
Yeah, I got it. Taking notes.
So ultimately, what I'd want to do is, this is something that I will commonly do, is say, hey, this is a working schedule. It's not one that's going to print out because it's got duplicate fields, but the new one, I'll create a new one that's going to be a duplicate of it, and we'll just call it final here. All right, and in this one, I'm going to get rid of that extra field that's no longer needed, so I'll just remove it. So now, what do we have? We have one that looks identical to what you had, but now these are all editable here, and anything you put in here will go to all of those elements on the plan. Now you were editing it in the schedule, which was fine, but you couldn't see on the plan what that note referred to, right? Now it's going to be referring to this keynote field, which is available and visible within the element itself. So that's a first level of saying, okay, we're taking objects that have a space in them for defining, what a note is. We're doing it so we can see it in the plan, and we can see it in the schedule and coordinate directly, as opposed to it being blind when we place the note there. Now let's look at some other options here. First of all, in your scheme, you have some things saying, we're going to list all the objects that are using multi-leader where the head shape is a circle. Okay, that's fine. And maybe the text box length is not critical here. I'm just going to say in my final one, I'll remove that. But what I would probably want to do is add criteria and say that they're on a layer, right? Okay, so what layer are they on? Okay, well, are they on the ArchiCAD layer or whatever? I don't know what layer you have them on. Now I'll just say okay. And these all disappear. Why? Because they're not on the ArchiCAD layer, right? So let me go back to the other one that was a working one. And let's just select this and say, well, let me go back to the plan and find it here. And this element is on A, notes and dimensions A. So that's the one that you're using. And assuming that you wanted to only list the ones that are on that layer, then you would go into the schedule scheme settings. And let's do it for the final one here, and say that the layer is notes A, notes and dimensions A. I think that's what it was there. All right, so if I got it right, then we'll have, these ones showing. So generally your criteria should make more sense rather than trying to be very specific about necessarily the object and the size of the object, whatever. Just have it be something. It's an object and it's on a certain layer, so that would be a more conventional way of listing it. Now, if you said, well, I want it to be listed on here, but we also want to have ones that are on the plumbing layer or, some other thing, you can say, I'd like to add another layer here, and then say that it's going to be on this layer or on, some other layer. So now, you would be scheduling potentially multiple ones, and you could then say, I'd like to group these little algebraic sort of parentheses, and so you can have, potentially multiple different layer types. You could also say that well, no, in this case you can't say layer name. I wonder if you can say layer name, because you might be able to say, hey, if the layer name has the word notes in it, then I want to do that. I'm not sure if that's available.
What was that group that you did? I'm not familiar with that.
So this is this little what do you call it? A parenthesis.
Mm-hmm.
If I press down here, we can say no parenthesis or potentially one or more parentheses. That's what you're talking about, the grouping thing?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, if you ever think of like a A times B plus C, and B plus C is within parentheses, like in algebra, then that's what this is doing. It's basically saying that these elements, these two things are, have a certain relationship, in this case, or and. So in other words, the layer is this, or the layer is that. But it only will list things that are, all of these are true here. Now, by the way, this thing of layer element type is not a beam segment. Well, we know that the element type is an object, so we don't even have to say this. The only reason this is here is because at a certain point when Graphisoft migrated or added certain things into the program, old schedules started to list these new components. They added beam segments and column segments in maybe 23 or 24. So they just automatically changed all of the, what do you call it?
I'm going, I forgot I have to go get my glasses.
Okay, all right.
Daddy.
Yeah, so I have my puppy here who's gonna potentially be wanting my attention. All right, anyway, so these can be removed because they're not necessary. I can just highlight this and say remove and remove that one there. So we're simplifying it down, saying it's an object that's got this name. Maybe we want to be specific about it being a circular marker. The elevation is probably, not critical. I wouldn't say that you're going to put an annotation element at a height. I would just remove that. And now it's a little bit more, streamlined there. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, next step up in this, and I said there's a whole lot of layers that you can do. These, now this says, interesting, scheme settings. Is this and that or that? So we, that's the final one. Let me go back to this and see what, there's something that text box length. Why is this one not showing that? Some of the same ones. So we'd have to play around with it to see, because I may have removed a criteria that was important for it.
Got it.
All right, but I'm going to do two more things quickly. One is we'll talk about labels as opposed to objects, and then we'll talk about a third-party product that you can use. And so these are two things that can take this a little further. And I'm going to show everybody, this is our little puppy who's 2 years old, and she just wanted a little attention. Now I'll put her down and hopefully she'll feel like daddy paid attention. All right, so labels. Okay, now if I go to the plan here, instead of having a just a freestanding object, I can put a label here, and a label, let's go and label something. When I hover over an element, if I have the label tool set to be associative as opposed to freestanding, and have it set so I can click multiple times to place where the leader line is, I can hover over something like this car and place a note. Now, what does this note have on it? It says face of wall sheathing. That's sort of crazy. That's because this particular label, or when I just switch to the label tool, it has some preset text. Let me just, I think we can, if I just, should be able to edit this. Why is it not letting me edit this here? Why is it not letting me edit label text? Editable. Okay, maybe because it's already placed, I have to edit it on the plan here. So let me just delete that. And before I place it in, go into the settings here and say clear text. All right, so now I can go and place, something where I'm going to type in some theory. I'm just going to put in car, okay? Now, the word car I just manually typed in, but there's probably some information about cars or walls or beams or columns or other things that we would like to reference or even have a keynote about. So let's look at this car and we'll go into the settings. Here's the car. Is it 3D? Yeah, it is some sort of car there. Well, look down here and here's keynote. All right. So I can call this, let's say pickup truck. Okay. All right. So that's a note there. All right. Now, this object knows that it's a pickup truck, but the note here doesn't say anything about it. If I go and click within here, take the word car out, and instead of typing in something, I say I'd like to pick up some information about either the current environment or the element this is pointing at. When I click on it and I go to keynote, it says, oh, would you like to get the keynote that comes from this object? You see it says pickup truck, right? So now if I have this object and in the note, I say it's actually not a, where is the pickup truck? It's, a new late model Tesla, okay? So now this thing has that note. So now this note is picking up the information about the actual element and displaying it. Now, how is it displayed? Well, right now it has a leader line. I can turn off the leader line. I think if I scroll over here, I can turn that off. So now you can see it's just some text. I can put a frame around it. Let's see, there's an option for, where is the frame? I don't know, sometimes it's actually, you have to go into the dialog box and say, do I want a frame here? And then let's see the frame. What's the frame? What is that going to look like? We can see here's a box around that. And there is an option for the frame to have a certain size, let's say a little space around it. So now I just put in a number and that's how far it is. Now this isn't a round thing here, but we could have ones that are round if we wanted. Instead of using the text auto text here, let's see. We can use something similar that would be one of these label ones. Here's an NCS indicator, all right? So the NCS indicator one probably has as a label, symbol label, keynote indicator. There are different choices. You'll see, let me turn off this frame one, and then you can see different shapes that are built in. Here's a circle, so fixed furniture there. All right, so here's a circle. We can define the size of the circle, text position, in shape, whatever. So there's some options in here, and then we can say, I believe, let's see, where's the information? Where is it going to be? Hot link and element ID, custom. I wonder whether this actually allows us now to put in a reference. Maybe we have to use a property label because this one, okay, I'm running out of time here to do it. The point I want to make is that we can have labels that do show up in a schedule that have information about the actual element, and you can have more than one field. So I just set up one field called keynote. We could have keynote ID, for the 101, 102, 103. And you can then have a list of you can have keynotes on the plan, and you can have descriptions in the schedule. Now, in order to show the end result of this, I'm going to open up master template where I have this all set up, and you can do this manually, but if you buy master template, for example, you can get all of this set up. So let's just see here. So let me just get master template, and I'm working on 26. So this is all files here. 26, E2, E3 here. Okay, this one.
Is master template is a template that you put together?
Yes. Okay, so the reason I'm going to bring it up, I mean, hey, it would be nice if some of you said, that looks cool, I'm going to buy it, but is more just to show you the end result, because I don't have time to show all the pieces.
Yeah.
But ultimately what we have in master template, and similar to BIM 6X, there's a series of property fields that are set up. So if I go to schedule, let's see, a keynote schedule, let's see, we have schedules, and we have spec general listing, here's schedule, here's divisions. See about this. All right, so this is a specification schedule that is following the same idea. We have elements that have a category, a reference ID, that would be like your 101, 102, etc. Then a drawing note, so it allows you to say, hey, I'd like to have a note that isn't just a 101 or a numeric one, but actually is a short form, and then it has a longer name. So I'll show you this one here for the medicine cabinet as an example. This is not a real project. You'll see it's a very, very, very simple example here. But what is this? This is just an object. This object has some settings in it. In the classification and properties in the master template section, we have a category, we have a drawing note, which is a short note, and we have a longer description. So the longer description is intended to go into your schedule, longer than you would typically put on the plan, but you might have a short note here. So now let me go and just drag a copy of this down, and let's change it to something else. So we're gonna say cabinet. All right, so I'll just put in, come on now. Okay, we'll put in, why are we seeing so many different types? I just wanted, base cabinet, okay. All right, we'll just put this in here. All right, so here's a cabinet that I've just dragged in. I'm gonna go in and say, what are my notes on this? We go and say that it is a certain type of an element. It's a, let's see, fixture might be, no, do you have casework? No. Elements, construction element. Let's just call it a member here. Why don't they have, MEP element maybe? No. Some of the stuff that's that they've done with this. Anyway, I'll just call it a member. So having given it something here, now we have all of these abilities to put things in. So we're just going to say, we want to note here, so the, let's just give it that 101 or something like that, and we'll call it base cabinet. And then we'll say manufacturer info goes here along with installation notes. All right, so now this shows up in the plan, it shows up in this schedule. Let's go and did I actually Okay, this note here, let me go and change the note here. So what if I wanted to have this just being the keynote here? So we've got AMT. I'll say it's going to be the division there. Drawing note. Okay, there's the base cabinet. Okay, and category. Okay, there's the category. So let me I want to just get rid of, so I'm going to say that it's going to be the, say the category. So there's the 101. So if I just wanted it to be the number, I can do that. If I wanted it to be something like the number, and in some cases I wanted to, moving too quickly here, I wanted it to be the number, and then I want it to be have a space, and then I want to have the drawing note there. So this is a way that you can have notes that show up on plan with just the number or just the name or both, things like that. And then if we go into the schedule, this did not exist in the schedule before. Here's the 101, here's the base cabinet, and here's the text that I just described. So what we're doing is we're putting in the note into the element and having a label refer to the element, as opposed to having a label just sort of arbitrarily be, something that shows up in a schedule that you put near things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Question on those text boxes, because I was running into, there was a maximum number of characters that could fit into the notes.
It might be like 512 characters, which would be, roughly 100 words. I'm not exactly sure. It's fairly lengthy, but it's not. You can't put a page of text in there.
Okay. And then.
And that's why we actually, in this one, we have a general description and workmanship notes. Basically, I took this from, there's an architect in the UK named Timothy Ball, who designed his own system like this. And I actually co-produced with him a training on how to do this type of coordination between elements and schedules. And so I just adapted it into master template. He basically very similar to what he does based on the UK sort of numbering system and et cetera. So.
Yeah, no, I think, and I know there's not time for this today, because this sort of leads into my second question of specifications of, sheathing and exterior finishes and insulation and chipboard and all of that. So do you have some of that stuff set up?
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up. So sorry, there is a third-party product called CAD Image Keynotes. Let me just search specifically for CAD Image Keynotes. So CAD Image is a company based in New Zealand, originally part of the ArchiCAD distributor in New Zealand, named Graphisoft New Zealand, later taken over by Central Innovation here. So this is a tool that you can purchase, and I'm just going to describe briefly what it does that's different than what I just described. Register, guess they don't have a picture. Oh, here's features. Display notes in different formats. Do they have any? Okay, so what it does is it allows you to create a little database, sort of similar to what you do in your schedule. So in your schedule, you have number and some text information, etc. It allows you to, when you pick an object like that cabinet, to say which thing refers to it, and you're going to a central database, essentially a central record-keeping thing, So that's a time saver because you can define it for the whole project or even for your office, this database of notes. You can, in a project, renumber them, like what you were doing, saying, well, some things are not relevant. We're just going to renumber it so we've got a sequence. It does allow you to have a list of notes next to a plan or an elevation for the things that it sees are in that drawing. So in other words, you maybe have 8 notes that are relevant out of 50 notes that you've got listed. It can do that, and it can actually do it based on a sheet. So you have 3 drawings on a sheet. You can say, what are the notes that are referenced on these 3 drawings? So that's where we go. It goes much further than what I was demonstrating. It's still based on the idea that you've got information associated with the actual element that's being scheduled, in some graphic way, as opposed to just annotations that you're placing sort of arbitrarily. But this is something that you can buy. I used to sell, some of their products years ago, but I haven't in a long time. So this is $80 a month, this is Australian dollars, $800 a year. So it's that's the premium, the professional, basic access. Okay, they actually have a bunch of tools. That's 12 tools. So if you just wanted, for example, 2 tools, including this one, then it would be a little cheaper. But so it has a cost, but if you think that it would save you a bunch of time and reduce errors, then obviously it could be justified. So Katrina, is that?
Yeah, if I could just ask about your template.
Yeah.
Does that, do you have somewhere on your website what you include in that? I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, so the for information on master template, it's under actemplate.com, and there, I have a video that describes it from a high level, some descriptions of different things that are in it. Now, if you want to see a fairly long demonstration of it, you can go to my YouTube channel, and so I'll just bring up my channel here. So if you do youtube.com/Eric Bobrow, it will come up there. And then if you do a search here for master template, you'll see here, this is a 2-hour demonstration of all the things that were in master template 3 years ago. I've added a few more things here and there, but it's basically 95% is the same. So check that out if you want to sort of see and go, this is useful or not.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all the information. I know that was a lot of information.
Yeah, well, I try to fit in as much as I could, and it's obviously, I asked you to give me a sample file, and in some ways that helped just to see context and how you're doing it. But in another way, I had to sort of build some things, up, and some of it was a little bit techy, I would say. All right, so I'm just going to look, we're over the 2-hour mark. I'm just going to look at some comments that were pasted in or typed in and see if there's any quick things I can either respond to or direct people to. Okay. All right, so Tom Rodden said he'll follow up with me later on some of his questions. Tom Palmer says, the last 2 lines, beams get added automatically when moving to newer ArchiCAD versions. Yeah, so I did mention that. Yeah, the criteria that say it's not a beam segment or not a column segment. Yeah, it's migrating. Maybe because the text field is blank. No, that was, I think I explained that. That was basically you couldn't fill in some information because the field reference was unavailable. So there's something in the schedules that says you can type in things if the element you're referring to has that a placeholder, a place to put it. And if it doesn't, then you'll see 3 dashes, and it'll basically mean I don't have that information, and there's no place to put it. Website for master template, Ryan, is actemplate.com, ArchiCAD template.com. And do I have the 26 template ready yet? It's very close, but I haven't quite gotten to it. I'm trying to get it out, this week, but maybe it'll be next week. So very soon. You can use the 25 template in 26. There are just a few things that I'm going to be, revamping, but it'll be easy to migrate. If you didn't have master template, you can get the 25 template and then work with it and then swap things in. Paul Adams, would you then use Element ID Manager to sort the keynote number? Good question, Paul. Paul, do you have your line open here? Your line is open, so let's just go ahead and say hi.
Hey.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Element ID Manager is, I'll just show you where it's located and then tell you what it does. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but if you go to the document menu and you go to, what is it?
I think it's listing extras.
Listing extras, Element ID Manager. So what that does is it allows you to say select elements, for example, all the windows, and say, I would like to renumber them. Here's the system I want. I want it to be W starting with 01. Okay. Now, if you just say, do it for me, it'll do it and number them perhaps uniquely, but not necessarily in a sequence that makes sense. There is a way, and I have a video in my YouTube channel that describes how you do it, where you can get the order the way, makes sense. The short answer is you can select them one after another, like go around the building clockwise, for example, shift click, shift click, shift click around, then do the Element ID Manager, tell it how you want it to be numbered and even where it starts, like maybe you're on the second floor, so you want them to be window 21 through 28. So you can just tell it where to start, and then it will number it based on that. So in the case of the keynotes, you could select keynotes that are placed on, if we were using the mechanism that Katrina had, you could select them in a certain order. And as long as if you use the ID as opposed to a parameter, an internal parameter, then you could use the Element ID Manager. So you could do that. On the other hand, if you're talking about IDs that are related to cabinets or beams or other building elements, frankly, I don't quite know how you would use it because of
I don't think it would apply except for just basically the number of the tags, because I've been just using a Word document, so I get my numbering, I print a PDF, and that's just imported, and I just work back and forth updating the one as I need to. And then there's that point where I go around and tag all things manually and type the numbers in. But that's what I'm looking for, is an improved way to manage that aspect of the keynote. And so
sounds like you've got it pretty dialed in. CAD image keynotes could take it further, in terms of management and things. But just doing it in a separate document, importing it so you can just have, basically a nicely formatted thing that you place on a sheet, and then manually using that as a reference. Hey, this is going to be, 105, and this is going to be 106. Does work. You can then double check. You can audit it by creating a schedule similar to what we were doing earlier that reports on everything, and then you can make sure, you can have little preview images of the elements, to say, oh, do I have a cabinet designated as a plumbing fixture? Oh, that's not right. So you can have a report that tells you whether your notes correspond in the way that you would expect. So that would be another management thing, because obviously that's one of the things we all want to avoid, is putting a note that's the wrong number, for an element.
yeah, that audit would be a great tool to back it up. Thanks.
Yeah. So Ryan says if you buy 25 for master template, do you get 26? Yes. Yeah. Basically, anyone who purchased after, I don't know if it's June 1st or July 1st, will get it without any additional charge. All right. So we've gone now 2¼ hours, and there are other questions I know out there. If you'd like to get my help with ArchiCAD questions, I invite you to sign up for my ArchiCAD coaching program. That's at archicadtraining.com/coaching. If you want to get a comprehensive training course on ArchiCAD, go to the main page on that site, archicadtraining.com, and you'll see information about what I call the ArchiCAD Best Practices 2020 course. I named it that way because I started the course leading into 2020, the year, and I also thought, hey, in the US at least, 2020 means, in terms of vision, is like seeing things really clearly. So it's a very, very detailed course on, I would say, virtually all standard areas of practice in ArchiCAD. I don't get into structural engineering, and I don't get into, certain types of construction estimating things, but, most of the stuff that you all need, I cover in fair detail. So if you have any questions, follow up, just email me at support@bobrow.com, and it'll be my pleasure to at least point you in the right direction or, give you some guidance. All right. Thank you all for joining me today. And this will be posted on my YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/Eric Bobrow, you'll find it certainly within a few days from now, maybe even by tomorrow. All right. Take care, everybody. And let's just see if there's any no other notes there. Okay, so we'll take care. Bye-bye.